All right, folks, I was going to try and take today off from talking about the ghastly war in Israel. Um, but we have more this stupid beheaded babies controversy. And I don't mean to be glib about this because the idea of beheading babies is stupid. No, it's a very serious topic, but there is so much going on in this war aside from this one story, but it's a hill that people continue to. Well, I shouldn't say it. It's not a hill that people are willing to die on necessarily. It's just it is the number one topic of conversation, and people keep arguing about it endlessly. And I see so many news stories about it when the evidence, the accepted evidence of what actually happened, verified facts, is bad enough. You don't need this to also be true. We don't need to worry to like arbitrate, okay, is this true or not? And so just for now, for the sake of argument, ignore that story until there's evidence of it, and focus on what we have actual pictures of, which Netanyahu's Twitter account, the official whatever Prime Minister of Israel Twitter account, which I'm not saying that's like a great source, but they put out real pictures today. Now, it wasn't of beheaded babies, but it was of infants that had been killed. Okay, that's bad enough. They don't have to be beheaded. They showed one that was killed, and then they showed some other bodies, like body parts, that had been burnt to a crisp. So presumably they were killed, and then the bodies were burned, and then they had one body that they showed that wasn't burned. There was only 3 pictures, but that's enough. That's enough to show, okay, they were killing babies. Now, were they beheaded? No. Now, yesterday, after I recorded my video, I saw that Joe Biden had said that he never thought he'd see pictures of beheaded babies, implying that he saw pictures of beheaded babies. Well, then the White House had to reel that back in, which again is undermining the stupid beheaded babies story. In fact, that's almost what I was going to talk about today. But then I saw the pictures, the real pictures, verified I don't know about verified, but they're real enough for me. I'm willing to take them at face value. The Israelis are putting them out. I would hope that the Israelis did not just find pictures of other babies that had been murdered and burnt and or passing them off as new photos. I'd hope they're not that low, because this is about the most serious topic imaginable. But anyway, the stupid beheaded baby story is making the rounds because the White House has had to walk back this idea that Biden confirmed the truth of it. He did not verify it. He has not seen any pictures, they said. He was just referring to news reports. And so by pictures, he meant like, motion pictures on television or in the newspaper. He saw a picture, like they have like a thumbnail pic or whatever with the article saying, report about beheaded babies. Like he didn't actually see pictures of beheaded babies. So let's put that out there. There's no evidence of that. But again, would it make the situation much worse if it was true? Is it really that? I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter if babies were beheaded. What I'm saying is the situation is already very bad. And I'm sick and tired of how one-sided and just pig-headed and frankly ignorant people are about this whole situation. History always begins today when stuff like this happens. When the Ukraine war started, nobody cared about what's been happening since 2014. They only cared about, what's happened since the arbitrary date of like February 2022. And even then, they, don't like to talk about events that don't comply with their narrative. Like the fact that there was a peace plan in March of 2022. Both sides, Ukraine and Russia, were going to agree to it. And then the U.S. and Britain came in and completely took it off the table because Ukraine is a puppet state of the West, and Zelensky did not have the authority to actually accept the peace proposal from Russia. But I'm not going to get off talking about Ukraine today. Today is still about Israel and Palestine. And people still want to talk about this issue as if there were a few Palestinians just out for a stroll on a Sunday who decided to go and massacre some Israeli civilians, for no reason. You will never understand what's going on here unless you try and analyze their mindset. Strategic empathy is not a form of agreement. I shouldn't have to say this. These are things that people study in college. People, serious people, not the art history or the gender theory people. I mean, like proper international relations students who actually, who I think a lot of them go into university with a good heart, thinking that they're going to be able to change the world and they want to know how the world works. This is a very important, basic, logical framework. You have to figure out how, if you're looking at a situation, you have to understand how the different sides think, whether you're on one side or not. You need to understand how all sides are thinking about it, what their logic is, and so that's so that you can try and solve whatever the conflict is. And this is a part of an ongoing conflict. The bottom line, which I think people who are really deep and have a long understanding of and who know this situation well, I think that a lot of them have become somewhat callous because they're so tired of the mainstream thought that they don't ease people into it. Max Blumenthal was on Timcast on Monday, I think it was. And I think Max, for the most part, he said things that were very factual. But he didn't necessarily say them in a way that the ordinary Timcast audience, which I'm sure was 99.9, well, I shouldn't say that. Let's say 95% off the bat, very pro-Israel. He did not ease them into it. I don't think he presented the information in a way that they could relate to it. They were able to write him off as just a Hamas shill. That was very easy for them, for most of those people. And partially because he refused to say anything negative about them and only wanted to talk about the negative aspects of Israel. And I understand why he does that, because he's trying to provide balance. Because he sees the entirety of the media, tells you everything positive about Israel, everything negative about Palestinians in general, not just Hamas. Or in the case of, I happened to, unfortunately, in the truck today, my radio passed the Sean Hannity show, and they were talking about, now let me make it clear. And this was, I think, Sean's guest or something talking about this. He was saying, you can't distinguish between Hamas and ordinary Palestinians. They're all Hamas. They're all the same. They're all guilty. They're all baby murderers. The only good Palestinian is a dead Palestinian. I mean, he basically stopped short of saying that. That was but he went right up to that line. He said, Hamas, which I think I cannot certainly understand. I think it's justified after this weekend alone to say Hamas, they're bad guys. Okay, they committed evil acts. These are evil people. I have no problem with someone saying that. Then they take it a step further and say all Palestinians are Hamas, but then they don't follow it up by saying, and that's why we should kill all Palestinians. But do they even have to say that? That is clearly the implication there. You're saying that this group, which committed evil acts, is representative of a group of at least 2 million people, because that's Gaza. But people in the West and on like cable news and radio, they don't know the difference between Gaza and the West Bank. But anyway, I was confused at first. I didn't understand what was this massacre about. I couldn't find out what did they do even. What did they accomplish? What was the point of this? Were they just trying to go and kick the hornet's nest? Because as I said on the first day that I talked about this issue, however many Israelis they were able to take out, the Israelis will be able to take out that many Palestinian civilians in their first airstrike. And we keep seeing, the videos of all the bombs, of warehouses full of bombs being loaded onto aircraft that are going to go bomb Gaza. And they're leveling entire neighborhoods. And so the Palestinian civilians are incurring, the Israelis are having their vengeance, let's put it that way. And I assure you the Israelis will have racked up a higher body count of Palestinian dead than Hamas is ever going to be able to take out Israelis, in this current stage of the conflict. So I struggled for that first day. Okay, what were they trying to do? And eventually I was able to find out, they took a bunch of hostages. Makes perfect sense. We're hearing something like 100 hostages, which perhaps a fifth of them are dual U.S. citizens. And so it became clear, gosh, I'm only getting to this 10 minutes in, it became clear, okay, their goal here was to go in, take hostages, and then they just killed as many people as, whoever they couldn't take with them. because, to them, I'm sure the only good Israeli is a dead Israeli. These people have no political power. There is no way for them to, in their society, to better themselves. They're just in a perpetual state of squalor. And this is them lashing out. That explains the rage. But then the hostage taking, what that is an act of trying to amass some power. It gives them the tiniest amount of leverage over the Israelis, which last week, before this occurred, they had no leverage over the Israelis. The Israelis had absolutely no reason to ever talk to them or to listen to them. The only time that the Israelis ever listen to the Palestinians or give them anything is when the Palestinians lash out violently. Violence is their only recourse, has been for decades. And so that is why it's unsurprising when we see a new round of violence. But hostage-taking is more efficient than the regular just form of violence. And so that brings me to the dead babies. What it looks to me is that I think this was a matter of efficiency. The reason why there's probably an outsourced supply of dead babies versus maybe other bodies is because if they're trying to move hostages, babies will slow you down. Babies have diapers. They poop. They might get sick. You don't know what's wrong with them. They scream a lot. Babies don't make good hostages. Adults make good hostages. Perhaps kids who are big enough to move around and are take up no more space or resources than an adult. They might make a good hostage, especially if you can get them on video crying or something. And so I think that what happened when they were going through the process of taking hostages, not only were they killing everyone who they couldn't bring with them, but people who had babies, who they wanted to take hostage, they probably separated the babies, took them away, and then, I would imagine, killed them. And then, from what we're seeing in the pictures, there are burned bodies, which, it's kind of takes a while. I would think if you're moving quickly, you're not going to have time to burn all the dead bodies. If they were burning bodies and they were stacking up that many of them, then they probably, and we know this from the reports, had a lot of time on their hands where there was no Israeli response. There was nobody around. There was no one coming to rescue these people. And so the Hamas guys as they were sorting through people, taking the people who would be good hostages, killing the rest, and therefore killing all the babies. And I'm sure the elderly, anyone who infirmed, people who were sick, anyone who just wasn't ready to get up and go would have been killed. Because you have the pick of the litter. You can only bring as many people, bring so many people back with you. And so these bodies are stacking up, and so all of a sudden they've got a pile of babies sitting there, and they think, maybe this looks a little bad. Maybe we should burn this so people can't necessarily tell what they're looking at. And that takes time. And so something I saw Viva Fry bring up on his stream, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, was that there was this 60 Minutes piece from a few weeks ago talking about the protests in Israel against judicial reforms. I don't know much about it. I just know that it exists. And that it was talking about how reservists in the IDF were on strike over the judicial reforms, saying we don't want to serve this government. And it seemed like a lot of people who normally would be reporting for duty to the IDF were not showing up. And perhaps that might partially explain the slow response. Now, I don't know if enough people went on strike to the point to where, hey, this is probably the biggest thing going on right now. Does the IDF really not have resources to send down there? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm sure that Israel won't tell us whatever problems there were, or maybe this is just how slow the response time is. No local police showed up. That seems very fishy to me. It seems like that Hamas had free reign for an entire day. They were just able to unleash hell and do whatever they wanted. So I guess the next thing we should wait for is to hear what Hamas plans to do with the hostages. We did hear one thing earlier this week where they I think this is probably a bluff because it would be a waste. They said that they would start wasting hostages every time that Israel bombed a civilian building. It's like, well, that would be every bomb that Israel drops pretty much, because it's not like Gaza has a government or a military officially, so everything's kind of civilian or mixed or what have you. So if they'd done that, all the hostages would be dead already, and Hamas would have not gotten anything out of taking hostages. So I'm waiting to hear what their demands are, because they should put a price on these people's heads. And maybe that price is, maybe they'll try and go for the whole game and say, that price will be, sovereignty over Gaza. Give us an actual government, independence, no more Israeli interference in our external affairs, or internal for that matter. But I think that the Israelis, the way that they play their game, if the people in Gaza kept their heads down and there were no skirmishes, I don't think that Israel would just bomb them for no reason. Then I think that Israel would be happy to just have people warehoused there, but they would stay in perpetual poverty. They would have no sovereignty. They would not be able to engage in international trade. And so I think that I would think that's got to be their number one demand. But who knows? Maybe it could be some more religious type goal instead of a practical goal, something about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, since this is supposedly a response to what's been going on with the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which I do not follow. They're calling it Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. And Hamas has called for people or their supporters around the world to engage in jihad, financial or otherwise, tomorrow on October the 13th. So maybe they'll announce their demands then. Until then, I would expect Israel to continue bombing neighborhoods in Gaza. And so, yes, that means lots of innocent civilians are going to be killed there too. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.